The Toronto Police Service has arrested 10 men in connection with a series of violent incidences that occurred across the GTA, and one man remains outstanding. These incidents include a mass shooting at a pub in Scarborough on Friday, March 7th, 2025. That night, 3 suspects entered the pub and opened fire inside. 9 people were shot and other people were injured as a result. No one was killed, which is truly a miracle. But the effects of this mass shooting remain devastating for the victims and for the sense of safety in our communities.
Investigators were able to establish links between the pub shooting and several other previously unsolved shootings, including at a tow truck yard in the city.
Right now, let's go live to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman and crime analyst Steve Ryan. They join us live from police headquarters.
Bakari, Arda, when you talk about that link, that key link that police were able to establish thanks to one suspect who police allege was involved both in the Piper Arms shooting and at least 2 other shootings, one in Scarborough, one at St. Clair and Weston, that really is a key piece of information. That link is going to be pivotal to this case. I want to play for our viewers once again this surveillance video footage from inside the Piper Arms because it really it paints a very clear picture as to what happened. You see patrons there just by the front door hanging out in a pub, as we all do, when 3 suspects, masked suspects, one with an assault-style rifle and 2 handguns, come into the pub and they start firing indiscriminately, with zero disregard for human life, as the chief had to say. That's certainly the terror that people inside this pub that night, March 7th, almost 3 months ago, experienced on opening night. When I was there a couple of days later, we saw the aftermath of the shooting, bullet holes in the wood paneling, in the bar, the doors, the shattered glass in the windows, and the panels and panes of the windows as well. You could see dozens and dozens of shots were fired. In total, 12 people injured. 9 of them we now know were shot. 3 others suffering injuries from things like broken glass and flying debris as they were trying to duck out of the way, get out of the way, escape just this melee and the chaos in the midst of this shooting. And so we heard today from the superintendent in charge of organized crime enforcement, Paul McIntyre, about what some of these victims experienced that night and in the aftermath as well. Listen.
We've stayed in contact with the victims and their families throughout. Many continue to recover from serious physical and emotional trauma. Some were shot multiple times. One person was shot 6 times and survived. Their strength and resilience has been remarkable.
So that was March 7th, 3 days prior, March 4th. Police say there were 2 other violent incidents. The first one at St. Clair and Weston, when police say that several masked suspects got to a tow truck yard and opened fire, one of the victims ducking for cover behind a vehicle. We have that surveillance video to share with our viewers as well. There it is. And then a second scenario as well at a car wash. This is on the other side of the city at Markham Road in Eglinton, when police say at least one suspect arrived and opened fire on a man who was washing his car. Thankfully, in all of these scenarios, all of the victims managed to survive, thankfully, Bakari and Arda. But some just incredible police work in terms of making these arrests. 10 people arrested, 203 charges in total. Let's bring in our crime analyst, Steve Ryan, to dissect a little bit more of what we're seeing. First of all, surveillance video really is king here. How vital do you think this information that police shared with us, made public today, really is in this case?
Well, your best evidence is your surveillance video. It even trumps, if you will, eyewitness accounts, because it can't be misinterpreted. It is what it is. So this video today was released, and there may be some shock value to that as well, hoping perhaps that people view this and they are quite disturbed by what they see. Perhaps they'll pick up the phone, drop a dime on somebody, and give the police another lead. When
you talk about the fact that police now say they have the 3 suspects who are alleged to have been involved for the shooting at the Piper Arms in custody. They've linked one of those individuals to these 2 other cases within the tow truck turf war. That's the key link, police say, at this point, between these individuals and the tow truck turf wars. What do you make of that component? Yeah, well, and that's a great point. Sometimes the lack of motive is your motive. And in this investigation, the announcement today, the police have said that with regards to the restaurant shooting,
they did not really provide a motive, nor could they rule out the connection with the tow truck industry. Occam's razor. Sometimes your obvious answer is staring you right in the face, and that is your reason. So given that at least one of them was associated with that shooting, and they're all connected as part of the same group, as the superintendent said, who were just gathered as hired hitmen, are thugs, most likely and there's just allegations right now, but most likely you might see a connection between that restaurant and the tow truck industry, but that'll all be part of the investigation, I'm sure.
When you say hired shooter, Steve, I think the average person who doesn't live a life of crime and violence might be surprised that there are people like this here in our city who, for money, can enter a life of crime and violence. What do you say to that? And I guess, does that happen more than maybe the vast majority of us realize?
Well, sadly, it has always been available, but I think we're seeing it more and more. And it appears as though, just based on the information that I've heard and the videos that we've seen, and the fact that nobody was killed, thankfully, this appears to be hired thugs who are out to intimidate those in the tow truck industry. And if somebody died, oh well, somebody died. I mean, it's either that or it's just sheer incompetence where nobody died, thankfully, but could that be as a result of lack of intent, or could that be a result of just being amateurs?
Where does the investigation go from here? Because I'm sure while police have 10 people in custody, one still outstanding, they probably, I imagine, want to know who hired these gunmen to do this.
Yeah, and I would suggest that most likely they have an idea as to who the hired people were. They just are not ready to make that announcement with regards to the public, and they may be waiting for some of those who are in custody now to roll, perhaps get themselves a better deal when it comes to sentencing. Maybe they will provide some information as well, but they will also try to make that connection, or not, between the restaurant shooting and the tow truck industry, despite what we just talked about here.
The average person has no connection to the tow truck industry. So when we see this kind of violence, and we covered a lot here on CP24, disagreements or violence within the tow truck industry. But when you add a restaurant or a pub where innocent people go, and it can be you or me or anybody who's at the pub that night, what do you think that does to just raise, I guess, the public temperature and concern about what's happening within these tow truck wars?
So as I always say, a community's perception is a community's reality. And if you have such an open event for anybody to go to, you or I could be sitting down there having dinner, having no idea that there's going to be a blast of gunfire coming through that restaurant. We may decide, let's pass on dinner tonight. And as a law enforcement manager managing crime and disorder, that's something you do not want to happen to your community, because the community tends to alter their quality of life as a result of being afraid of being the next victim. So great work on the police to be able to identify those suspects as quickly as they did. 3 months is nothing when you got 3 unknown suspects fleeing from a shooting scene. Good work, and I'm sure it'll continue to try to make a connection, or at least provide a motive, establish a motive as to what the reason was for that shooting in the restaurant.
Yeah, great police work. Steve Ryan, thanks so much. Bakari and Arda, I mean, this is a story that really garnered a lot of public attention. It really did. The reason being, it was one of the first mass shootings the city's had in a very long time. And as Steve and I were talking about, thankfully, nobody lost their life in any of these shootings, actually. Back to you.
Okay, live team coverage from TPS headquarters with CP24's Beatrice Vaisman and crime analyst Steve Ryan. Thank you.